Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraet Nashtaprayasu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from Bhagavad Gita. Thank you so much for joining this wonderful Bhagavad Gita Sangha on the evenings, which we are taking systematically from one verse to another. And today we are going to discuss the second verse from the 9th chapter, titled The Most Confidential Knowledge. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartu Avyayam. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartu Avyayam. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartu Avyayam. Word by word meaning. Rajavidya, the king of education. Rajaguhyam, the king of confidential knowledge. Pavitram, the purest. Idam, this. Uttamam, transcendental. Pratyaksha, by direct experience. Abhagamam, understood. Dharmyam, the principle of religion. Susukham, very happy. Kartum, to execute. Avyayam, everlasting. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called the king of education because it is the essence of all doctrine and philosophies explained before. Among the principal philosophers in India are Gautama, Kanada, Kapila, Yajnavalkya, Sandilya, Vaishwanara. And finally, there is Vyasadeva, the author of Vedanta Sutra. So there is no dearth of knowledge in the field of philosophy or transcendental knowledge. Now the Lord says that this 9th chapter is the king of all such knowledge. The essence of all knowledge that can be derived from the study of the Vedas and different kinds of philosophy. It is the most confidential because confidential or transcendental knowledge involves understanding the difference between the soul and the body. And the king of all confidential knowledge culminates in devotional service. Generally, people are not educated in this confidential knowledge. They are educated in external knowledge. As far as ordinary education is concerned, people are involved with so many departments: politics, sociology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, etc. There are so many departments of knowledge all over the world and many huge universities. But there is unfortunately no university or educational institution where the science of the spirit soul is instructed. Yet the soul is the most important part of the body. Without the presence of the soul, the body has no value. Still, people are placing great stress on the bodily necessities of life, not caring for the vital soul. The Bhagavad Gita, especially from the 2nd chapter on, stresses the importance of the soul. In the very beginning, the Lord says that the body is perishable and the soul is not perishable. Antavanta ime deha nitya shukta saririna. This is the confidential part of knowledge. That is the confidential part of knowledge. Simply knowing that the spirit soul is different from the body and that its nature is immutable, indestructible, and eternal. But that gives no positive information about the soul. Sometimes people are under the impression that the soul is different from the body and that when the body is finished or one is liberated from the body, the soul remains in a void and becomes impersonal. But actually, that is not the fact. How can the soul, which is so active within the body, be inactive after being liberated from the body? It is always active. If it is eternal, then it is eternally active, and its activities in the spiritual kingdom are the most confidential part of spiritual knowledge. These activities of the spirit soul are therefore indicated here as constituting the king of all knowledge, the most confidential part of the knowledge. The knowledge is the purest form of all activities, as explained in Vedic literature. In the Padma Purana, man's sinful activities have been analyzed and are shown to be the result of sin after sin. Those who are engaged in fruitive activities are entangled in different stages and forms of sinful reaction. For instance, when the seed of a particular tree is sown, the tree doesn't appear immediately to grow. It takes some time. It is first a small sprouting plant, then it assumes the form of a tree. Then it flowers and bears fruit. And when it is complete, the flowers and fruits are enjoyed by a person who has sown the seed of the tree. Similarly, a man performs a sinful act, and like a seed, it takes time to fructify. There are different stages. The sinful action may have already stopped within the individual, but the result of the fruit of the sinful action can still to be enjoyed. There are sins which are still in the form of a seed, and there are others which are already fructified and are giving us fruit, which we are enjoying as distress and pain. As explained in the 28th verse of 7th chapter, a person who has completely ended the reaction of all sinful activities and who is fully engaged in pious activities, being freed from the duality of this material world, becomes engaged in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. In other words, those who are actually engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Lord are already freed from all reactions. The statement is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Aparabdha phalam papam kutam bijam phalan mukham kramenaiva praliyate Vishnu bhakti ratatmanam. For those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all sinful reactions, whether fructified in the stalk or in the form of a seed, gradually vanish. Therefore, the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong, and it is called Pavitram Uttam, the purest. Uttama means transcendental. Tamas means this material world or darkness, and Uttama means that which is transcendental to material activities. Devotional activities are never to be considered material, although sometimes it appears that devotees are engaged just like ordinary men. One who can see and is familiar with the devotional service will know that they are not material activities. They're all spiritual and devotional, uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is said that the execution of devotional service is so perfect that one can perceive the results directly. This direct result is actually perceived, and we have practical experience that any person who is chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, in course of chanting without offense feels some transcendental pleasure and very quickly becomes purified of all material contamination. This is usually seen. Furthermore, if one engages not only in hearing but in trying to broadcast the message of devotional activities as well, or if he engages himself in helping the missionary activities of Krishna consciousness, he gradually feels spiritual progress. This advancement in spiritual life doesn't depend on any kind of previous education or qualification. The method itself is so pure that by simply engaging in it, one becomes pure. In Vedanta Sutra 3.2.26, this is also described in the following verse. Prakasascha karmani abhyasat. Devotional service is so potent that simply by engaging in the activities of devotional service, one becomes enlightened without a doubt. A practical example of this can be seen in the previous life of Narada, who in that life happened to be the son of a maid servant. He had no education, nor was he born into a high family, but when his mother was engaged in serving great devotees, Narada also became engaged. And sometime, in the absence of his mother, he would serve the great devotees himself. Narada personally says, Uchistam lepam anumodito dvijay, sakritsmai bhunje tad apasta kilvisha, evam pravartyasya vishuddha chetasas, tad dharma evatma ruchi prajayate. In the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.25, Narada described his previous life to his disciple Vyasadeva. He says that while engaged as a voice servant for those purified devotees during the 4 months of their stay. He was intimately associating with them. Sometimes those sages left remnants of food on their dishes, and the boy who would wash their dishes wanted to taste the remnants. So he asked the great devotees for their permission, and when they gave it, Narada ate those remnants and consequently became freed from all sinful reactions. As he went on eating, he gradually became as pure hearted as the sages. The great devotees relished the taste of unceasing devotional service to the Lord by hearing and chanting, and Narada gradually developed the same taste. Narada says further, Tantramva aham Krishna katha pragyatam anugrahena ashram manoharaha tat shraddhayam me anupadam vishramvata priyashravasya anga mamabdha ruchi. By associating with the sages, Narada got the taste of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and he developed a great desire for devotional service. Therefore, as described in the Vedanta Sutra, Prakashascha Karmani Abhyasa, if one is engaged simply in the act of devotional service, everything is revealed to him and automatically, and he can understand. This is called Pratyaksha, directly perceived. The word Dharmayam means the path of religion. Narada was actually a son of a maidservant. He had no opportunity to go to school. He was simply assisting his mother, and fortunately, his mother rendered some service to the devotees. The child Narada also got the opportunity, and simply by association, achieved the highest goal of all religion. The highest goal of religion is the devotional service, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai pumsha parodharma yato bhakti radhakshaje. Religious people generally do not know that the highest perfection of religion is the attainment of devotional service. As we already discussed in regard to the last verse of chapter 8, Vedeshu Yajneshu Taposhu Jaiva. Generally, Vedic knowledge is required for self-realization. But here, although Narada never went to the school of the spiritual master and was not educated in the Vedic principles, he acquired the highest result of Vedic study. This process is so potent that even without performing the religious process regularly, one can be raised to the highest perfection. How is this possible? This is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Acharavan Purusho Veda, one who is in association with great acharyas, even if he is not educated or has never studied the Vedas, one can become familiar with all the knowledge necessary for realization. The process of devotional service is a very happy one, Susukham. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, so one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by the authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn. Then one can eat the remnant of the food offered to Lord, nice palatable dishes. In every state of devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram Pushpam Phalang Toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what, even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are all acts available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person regardless of social position and will be accepted if offered with love. There are many instances in history. Simply by tasting the tulasi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to him. It is said that the devotional service is eternally existing. It is not as the Mayavadi philosophers claim. Although they sometimes take to so-called devotional service, their idea is that as long as they are not liberated, they will continue their devotional service. But at the end, when they become liberated, they will become one with the God. Such temporary time-serving devotional service is not accepted as pure devotional service. Actual devotional service continues even after liberation. When the devotee goes to the spiritual planet in the kingdom of God, he is also engaged there in serving the Supreme Lord. He doesn't try to become one with the Supreme Lord. As will be seen in Bhagavad Gita, actual devotional service begins after liberation. After one is liberated, when one is situated in the Brahman position, Brahmabhuta, once devotional service begins, Samasarvesu Bhutesu Madbhakti Lavate Param. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by executing Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, or any other yoga independently. By this yogic methods, one may make a little progress towards Bhakti Yoga, but without coming to the stage of devotional service, one cannot understand what the personality of Godhead. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is confirmed that when one becomes purified by executing the process of devotional service, especially by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from realized souls, then he can understand the science of Krishna or the science of God. Evam prasanna manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata. When one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus, the process of devotional service of Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest form of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamadam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakha Vitamscha हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी विश्वभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So thank you so much for joining this wonderful Bhagavad Gita discussion, and welcome to this such powerful verse. As you can see, Srila Prabhupada spent a lot of time writing the purport of this verse. So how much important Srila Prabhupada must be thinking this verse weighs. And as you know, this is one of the most quoted verse of Bhagavad Gita, and it is one of the top 108 verses of Bhagavad Gita when people go out and recite and describe the top 108 verses. So here Krishna is explaining something out of the world, actually, if you think through it. So in the prior verse 9.1, the beginning of this chapter, which is titled The Most Confidential Knowledge, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that, hey Arjuna, I'm going to reveal something to you. And that is the subsequent verse which we're talking to this year. Because you are unenvious, you are not envious to anyone. Because of that, I'm going to reveal myself. And this revelation is in this 8-point topic, which we're going to discuss. So Krishna is telling to Arjuna, in order to accept something, you have to get rid of all anarthas. As envy is a thing which will stop you in every step of the way, the 9.1 goes into a segue where it poses the importance that why envy should be get rid from our system in order to accept something. And Krishna in 9.1 tells Arjuna that you have to get rid of this anarthas. And now, if you think about it, if you see a sponge, and the sponge already has a lot of water in there, and you dip in water, the sponge is not going to take any more water because the sponge is filled with water. In order for the sponge to accept water, he has to get rid of the water so that it can absorb more water. Likewise, if you see in your garden, you will have probably 5 plants, and some plants are very well nourished, they're well grown, and some plants are not very healthy. It is primarily because it's the same sun god which is really, and the same rain god which is really ushering the sense of procreation in the form of nutrients. The sun rays the water, but some accept more than the others. So it is how well we're positioning ourselves to accept this most powerful verse which Krishna is speaking. So the importance for all of us, in order to accept, in order to observe more of this transcendental knowledge, which is very confidential. As you can see, this knowledge is hidden right in the middle of Bhagavad Gita. You have the 18 chapters, 9th chapter is right in the middle, and right in the middle, this is position. So Krishna is saying, Raja Guiham, It is very confidential. When you have some crates, when you have some pots, you just leave it in your garden. But when you have a will, when you have your passport, when you have your most critical certificate, you go to the bank, have a locker, and keep it there because it is very confidential. It is very precious. So you have to keep it right where it belongs. That's why Srila Prabhupada, over the years, have taught us that if a person is not ready to absorb Krishna consciousness or ready to appreciate Krishna consciousness, don't even try to sort of give them a book, give them something to read, but don't go too much deep into the loving exchanges between Srimati Radharani and Krishna with them, because they will never have the knowledge to absorb exactly like how the sponge was. It was filled with water. So, and like some of the saplings in your garden, they're not ready to accept. So they have to get fertilized, you have to put some mulch or however, get them ready to absorb. So we are in a position right in the middle of this beautiful chapter where we're going to discuss the 8 things Krishna is talking in this verse. And in order to do that, we have to get rid of all the envy. Envy is actually our last gatekeeper. If we really want to go up in our devotional service, the first thing we have to do is get rid of envy. And Krishna in 9.1, just as a prelude to giving the most confidential knowledge in 9.2, is explaining that you do not have envy. That's why I'm going to open. Having said that, after Arjuna has got rid of the envy, Krishna is revealing the topmost knowledge right in this verse. And Srila Prabhupada has spent a lot of time, as you know, we read, pages after pages after pages to go through the essence of this verse, through the purport. Srila Prabhupada is giving again and again, this how important this verse is. So without much ado, let's look at what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying 8 things here. The first thing Krishna is saying, this is the king of knowledge. So whenever we talk about king of knowledge, this is often misunderstood. This is not a knowledge which is only applicable to kings. Raja Vidya. Raja Vidya, so Prabhupada has written a beautiful book on Raja Vidya as well. But Raja Vidya is not for kings, it's for everyone. What it means is it's the king of knowledge. Of all the knowledge, this education, this information is the king of all the knowledge. That's the first thing Krishna is saying in this verse. There are 8 things Krishna is saying in this verse. We'll go after one after other, and we're going to discuss each of them a little bit because the purport was very long and it was really nice. And Srila Prabhupada has spoken everything. And actually, what we are kind of discussing is nothing in comparison to what Srila Prabhupada has laid down in the pages of purport we have read very closely, and hopefully all of you are paying attention, because what we are just saying is regurgitating what Srila Prabhupada has so beautifully written. So it's the king of education. And the second thing Krishna says is, it is Raja Guiham. Raja Vidya is the king of all education, is the topmost knowledge. And the second thing is Raja Guiham, is the most secret. Sometimes whenever we have, as I mentioned, any precious thing in your life, you basically keep it in a locker, you keep it in a secret place. And in earlier days, whenever the kings used to exchange information, during that time, there is a lot of loss of information. That's why cryptography was identified. Cryptography is one of the topmost subjects in computer science, and how people are taking a lot of information from others to take over the system. So that, as you know, the greatest problem in this world of internet is the loss of personal information, the identity theft. So identity theft, as you know, is people will gather so much information about you that they will impersonate, that they know everything about you. They will go to various different systems and they will change you, they will impersonate you and they will change their name. After some time, you will cease to exist in this world. Very dangerous. If we really want to protect, we have to make sure all the systems we have is up to date. And that's why everybody is looking for information. Information in this age is the topmost asset. And that's the reason why we have to protect. And Krishna is saying this knowledge is all about, directly or indirectly, about devotional service. But this aspect of devotional service, the points around devotional service, how to do this devotional service, what to do, when to do, that knowledge is the most secret knowledge. And we have to take due care in understanding this properly. Like, say, for example, if your eyes are filled, your spectacle is filled with dust, when you see out, you will see everything in a dusty way. You think the world is dusty, but actually when you clean up your spectacle and see the world, you will see everything very clearly. So in this age, when our vision is concocted, when our vision is not fully rationalized, is not fully understood, if we start acquiring any knowledge, that will appear to be wrong. And that is the reason why, in order to absorb something, in order to know something, you have to recognize how much you don't know. More you recognize how much you don't know, your knowledge acquisition process starts then and there. If you think you know everything, like a sponge, you will never have the right appetite to learn, because you never recognize that you know nothing in this world. And with the knowledge we have accrued through various different educational channels, and various different places, we are filled with understanding. We have to roll it back to accept this. That's the reason why, if in Krishna consciousness, you have not done enough to roll back the earlier knowledge we have and accept it, then we are into a khichdi kind of a understanding. So it is very important for us to get rid of all the garbage from our mind, so that we are positioned enough to initiate ourselves in acquiring this knowledge. People think getting a name or initiation is the end of the world. Actually, it is the beginning. We have learned nothing. We are basically initializing all the variables in a program so that we can start to get the processing done. And the only way to do that is to initialize all the variables, right? All our understanding, right? And the third thing Krishna is saying, it is the purest knowledge. It is so pure that when Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they were finance ministers under Husain, and when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went from Jagannath Puri to a place near Malda in West Bengal, where they were there, the name of the place is Ramkheli, and seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the desire for Sanatan Goswami, who was the elder, erupt to understand who we are, who is the supreme, what is the relationship. And then both of them left the finance ministry job. They were very rich at the time, and because they were part of the finance ministry, under Husain Shah, their names were also Mohammedan oriented, because that was the name given to them by the king. And finally they surrendered, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu initiated both of them finally. So it is so pure that people have left the topmost echelons of the job and have run to accept the purest knowledge. If this wouldn't have been the purest knowledge, because sometimes what happens is whenever you write a research paper, whenever you do a master's or a PhD, you think that is the end of the world. You have acquired a lot, but that's PhD or the master's was only specific to that. But this knowledge is so pure that it transcendental. It transcends all boundaries and all thought process, and it is purest. And the fourth thing Krishna is talking about is it is transcendental. And that's something which means that it was accurate thousands and millions of years ago. Krishna speaks to Arjuna. Arjuna says, hey, whatever I'm going to speak to you, thousands and millions of years ago, I have said the same thing to Manu, Ikshvaku, and so many others. So Arjuna was thinking Krishna was the cousin brother, and he is pretty much then and there. But the truthfulness of Bhagavad Gita is transcendental. It has transcended yugas, millenniums, ages, and it is still true after thousands of years. And as you know, Pluto, this is the example I keep giving, sorry for the repetition. Pluto, when we were a kid, was a planet. We had 9 planets, and in between, Pluto ceased to be a planet. And now Pluto is back as a planet again. So within our lifetime, we could see such knowledge being altered many times in our life right then and there. But the teachings of Bhagavad Gita is transcendental. And the fifth thing Krishna is talking about is the direct perception of the self by realization. So most of the time, we want to understand physics, mathematics, computer science, but never ever we.
Prabhuji, hang on, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we're not able to understand. Please hang on.
Semester Prabhu, if you could mute. So Bimal Prabhu, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the fifth thing Krishna is speaking is it gives the direct perception of the self by realization. Most of us, we do not know who we are. We do not know where we came from. And this is not very surprising. Even Brahmaji, when he came out from the navel of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he didn't know where he came from. Brahmaji, he is actually the creator of this universe as delegated by Garbhodaksha Vishnu. But he didn't know who he is, where he came from, what is the relation between the person who created him. But Bhagavad Gita gives the direct perception of the self as to who we are. We are not the body, we are the soul. And this body perishes, but the soul doesn't. The soul is part and parcel of Krishna. That's the second thing. We're not the body, we're the soul. That's the number one thing. The second thing is the soul which exists in our body is part and parcel of Krishna. And third thing is the soul loves Krishna. So when the soul, which is part of our body, loves Krishna, and we don't, we end up doing the loving of the channels of movies, and we do not love where we truly came from, then that is the disconnect. So that's where Bhagavad Gita, the fifth thing Krishna is saying is it gives the direct perception of the self by realization. We realize who we are, where we came from, and what is the relationship between us and where we came from. And that is why you go to any temple, you may not be getting the answer to this specific question, but you come to this ISKCON temple with the books we have, it clearly makes you understand or attempts to make you understand this particular point which Krishna is raising here, the fifth thing, because it gives the direct perception of the self by realization. And as you know, religion stands on 4 legs. Compassion. There is no religion without compassion can be called a religion. Austerity. Srila Prabhupada Nowadays, we take less than 24 hours to get to India. Srila Prabhupada took 30 days with 2 heart attacks. Austere, very austere, full of austerity. The third leg of religion is truthfulness. Everything we do has to be built on trust and truth. And then the fourth thing is the cleanliness. So as we dwell more on the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, we perfect these 4 pillars of religion: compassion, austerity, truthfulness, and cleanliness. And next, this knowledge is everlasting, as we discussed. It doesn't change within the realms of a scientific understanding. It doesn't change between millenniums. It doesn't change between person to person. Maybe they will analyze and make it different. They may say this yoga is better than this yoga, and this yoga is better than this yoga. But the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita has stayed millions of years ago, and it is everlasting. And then the last thing Krishna is saying is this application of the knowledge is always joyfully performed. So whenever we do any devotional service, we think, because of the devotional service I'm doing, I'm entitled for something. So this entitlement concept, where you're doing and you think, I deserve to get prasad or whatever it is. So that sense of entitlement of doing the devotional service and trying to get something, if we get this out of our system and we think that doing the devotional service is an honor, that doing the devotional service is something which is an asset, which is once in a lifetime. So when we start feeling that whatever we are doing, whether it is cleaning the bathroom in the temple or serving or doing any form of menial service, as long as you have no expectation, then the fun really begins. It really is joyfully performed. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to clean the Gundicha temple the day before Rath Yatra, the torrents of rain, of tears used to flow from his eyes. Gundicha Marjan, he was cleaning the temple, but he was so joyfully performed that he was dancing, crying in ecstasy. So the person is working hard. The Supreme Person, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this case, is working hard, but at the same time, he's crying. He's having that element of happiness. And with happiness, tears of joy is flowing. So it is joyfully performed. So these are the 8 things Krishna is so beautifully explaining in this verse, for which Srila Prabhupada took a lot of time in explaining to us that if we have understood these 8 things properly, it's the king of education. It is the topmost secret. It is the purest. It is transcendental. It is direct, spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it enhances our self-realization. It is the perfection of religion, the act of devotional service, and it stays, it's everlasting. People have left ISKCON, but after a year, when they go in a street and they see and hear Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that chord, the frequency, the resonance aligns, and then go back and start jumping with joy with the Kirtan Mandali. It's everlasting. Once the current is there, it is everlasting. And it has to be joyfully performed. The art of devotional service, once it is joyfully performed without the sense of entitlement, everything will be blissful. So with that, I'd like to say why the transcendental knowledge has to be studied. So this will go run quick on this. The knowledge or the understanding of this transcendental knowledge has to be done because we have to get rid of the ignorance in our hearts by slashing by the weapon of knowledge. The weapon of knowledge is like a sword. It basically cuts ignorance. In Bhagavad Gita, it says, Jnana asinatmana. That means this knowledge will cut all the ignorance and it will make the darkness go away. So that is why one should understand this transcendental knowledge, because all this bhusa, or the garbage what we have, if we do not make it slash by this transcendental knowledge, we are succumbing to the pressure of going astray. So that is why we should understand this transcendental knowledge. And when does this process get revived? And this is when Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhuna vinasha cha duskritam dharma sastapanarthaya sambhavami jipete. So when there is degradation in the form of the onset of Sankaracharya or Madhavacharya or Ramanujacharya or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Srila Prabhupada, there has been some element of degradation. And when that degradation happens, personalities come to re-establish the principle. So we know why we should know this, and when the trigger to know this takes place, and then how to achieve the transcendental knowledge. That's also there in Bhagavad Gita. So whenever we take Bhagavad Gita, the entire package is there. When, how, what, everything is there. So how to achieve this transcendental knowledge? Evam parampara praptam. We have to take it from the parampara, not from anywhere. And that is where there will be pollution, and that's where you will not get the right knowledge from the disciplic succession. So how to achieve transcendental knowledge? Evam parampara praptam. We have to take the disciplic succession through the saintly kings, or through bona fide acharyas, or from devotees who can take this. The devotees may not be very pious, but they're talking about something which is very pious. So there is nothing wrong in taking it from a discussion of devotees. And who can understand this transcendental knowledge? Vaktusi me sakha cheti. Nobody can understand this transcendental knowledge if you are not a bhakta. Krishna is saying very clearly, Bhaktusi me sakha cheti. You can only understand this by being a devotee or a friend. If you're not favorable in any form or shape, Krishna will not choose to reveal himself. So who can understand how this transcendental knowledge has to be understood, and why we should understand, and when the urge to understanding this is there, is very clearly mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. And lastly, what is the actual process? The actual process is pariprashnena sevaya. The actual process is tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. We have to inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. So what, when, how, everything is very clear to us. Transcendental knowledge, very confidential, topmost, and why it should be acquired, when it should be acquired, it's very, very clear to us. So we have a choice to make, whether we want to stick to this or we want to do whatever we are doing right now. So with that, such a powerful verse, we can go on and on, but we'll end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any comments, any reflections, anyone, Prabhuji or Mataji?
Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu.
Thank you.
I especially liked the point you made about initiation and how it initializes whatever nonsense has been going on. So I think that was a very powerful, and I love that analogy you made with, yeah, you can relate to it. That was very nice. Very nice. Very nice class, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Danu pranam, Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu. All praise to Srila Prabhupada.
So if any other comments, questions, otherwise we'll end here.
On the sponge, one example which you are telling. So, are you trying to say here the persons who are non-devotees or who are not devotees, when we talk to them, they will not absorb that because they are so much immersed with the material activity, and how much ever you say, they will not come out of it. That is what I'm trying to understand.
So Bimal Prabhu, I couldn't hear you properly for some reason.
No, the example what you gave of the sponge, right? It is completely drenched, right? And how much ever you give or talk, they would not be able to absorb more on that because they are completely, it's not able to soak any more water, right? So, is it an understanding if you talk to a non-devotee to come to Krishna conscious, they will not be able to come because they are already immersed in the material activities, and they will not absorb much that. Is that what?
Yeah, so very, very practical question, Prabhu. Prabhuji, can you hear me properly for some reason?
Yeah, very clear, Prabhuji. Very clear.
So I have tried that with my extended family. So Prabhu, first thing we have to think about is if Krishna chooses to reveal himself, he will reveal to our family or the new person you're referring to. But so the final choice is with Krishna. But we have this tendency to try, we are getting a lot of benefit, we're getting a lot of bliss, we're getting a lot of happiness with the association of devotees. So we try. So what happens when we try, if they have seen us grow up as a kid, and now, suppose say we're trying to preach to our parents or seniors, but they have seen us grow, so they have the social tendency to not accept us because they have been through this. So that is where I asked the same question to my Shiksha Guru, His Holiness Bhakti Guru Maharaj. He says, they may not listen to you, but they will listen to us. So take the help of local ISKCON temple or brahmachari to do a home program. And when they see brahmacharis come and give katha, they have accepted. And I have used this technique, Prabhu, and I have been very successful in not really sort of inspiring them, but at least they have taken to books and read. So there are certain techniques, but if you're trying to preach, often people give a lot of pushback, as you rightly said, and the way you pose the question, it has to do with a lot of different factors. First, Krishna is not revealing himself to them. Second is they may have a bit of a knowledge, like if you are from the database side, if you have done uncommitted writes, in order to really, if there is a problem, you have to roll it back. So they have to roll all those things back substantially to really understand. Srila Prabhupada came and really revolutionized the concept of devotional service, the higher taste, which they have not understood. And I'm really sad to read when I go to Amazon.in and I see our Bhagavad Gita. There are a lot of very irresponsible comments, because their comment is very much in the age, because in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna clearly mentions the evolution of Srishti Leela and why he is the Param Purusha. He is the he's the beginning person, and from here the plenary expansions has come from. But many people do not understand that, so they will always have some viewpoint, and we just have to sort of be patient with them, and we have to pray for them, and take some help to really try to motivate them if possible. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Any Prabhuji? If there is no other question, we can end here.
Yeah, thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu. It's a wonderful class. Yes, as it is mentioned, Prabhuji mentioned also in the purport, this is the king of knowledge. See, if a self-realized soul and understand and realize that from the words of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, that is a perfection. Like sometimes it says that Srimad Bhagavatam is a ripened fruit. But when usually a parrot come and touch with their beak and eat it, then it will be more sweet, more delicious. And here Srimad Bhagavad Gita is like that. Krishna is revealing the transcendental knowledge and the supreme truth. And it's also hear from the devotees and the Srila Prabhupada, then it will become more sweeter. And that's the perfection of understanding and realization. So this is the king of knowledge, Rajya Vidya, and the most confidential knowledge. Most confidential. Why the confidential means that it's not easy to get to everybody. Only those who are very dear to Krishna, like confidential knowledge. If you have some confidential knowledge that you don't tell to so many people, but you tell to your most close associates or close person. So likes that. So this is not easily understand by everybody, but those who are dear to Krishna, dear to devotees can understand this. So thank you so much for joining this most auspicious Srimad Bhagavatam class and Srimad Bhagavad Gita class in the Bhagavatam class in the morning, Bhagavad Gita class in the evening. This is all revealing that transcendental subject matter, truth, absolute truth. And when we hear from the self-realized souls, it gets more understanding and more realizing. So please join every day. And also, it's our duty as a compassionate, as devotees are paradukha dukhi, that give this out to those who are, not having this opportunity. Yes, we may able to come by the mercy of the Lord and the devotees to hear every day. There are so many people, they are stuck with their work, stuck with their lives, stuck with their daily problems, stuck with their so many calamities that they go through. So many people are out there with diseases, chronic diseases, and so many people out there. So it's our duty, and Srila Prabhupada always says that we are all should be part of this mission. This is a mission that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established. This is a mission. So we should be all part of that mission. That's the greatest fortune of all of us. If anybody willingly taking this service, giving this knowledge to others, as Krishna mentions, it's very dear to Krishna. So humbly request, we are still distributing books to others every day, every week, and every moment. We should have these thoughts of how can I give this knowledge to others? Those are so many people out there. But we are, by the mercy of the Lord, we are able to hear it and associate with the Bhagavad Gita and devotees. But there are so many people out there, they are not able to get this. So let's think about every moment that how we can give this to others so that everybody else get benefited. They can finally come to this point of that's their last birth in this universe. Whoever comes too close to Krishna, that means you are closing very closer to Krishna. Whoever comes closer to Bhagavad Gita means closer to Krishna. Because of we are hearing from Krishna. Yes, Krishna spoke this 5,000 years ago, but whenever we open the book, Krishna is speaking to us, not anybody else. Krishna is eternal. Whether we may just put it as a number of 5,000 years ago, but this is all a nimisha of Krishna. It's all just a matter of seconds. So Krishna is right there and speaking to us. That important it is. So we are so fortunate. We're so fortunate. Don't minimize the opportunity that we have. It's so purifying, so relishing, so much, giving us that hope that Krishna is engaging us. Remember that Krishna is engaging us. So thank you so much. Please always think about this one and how I can be part of this mission of Srila Prabhupada, and mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and mission of Sri Krishna. This is the real mission, and this is the real service to Krishna. So thank you so much. Please distribute books if you can, and tell to others, call out the people and to your families, friends. So many people, miserable people are out there. As Hemajaganath Puji rightly pointing out, Srila Prabhupada took 30 days of voyage, the journey, 2 heart attacks and vomiting initially. Srila Prabhupada was vomiting initially, very weak, and hardly getting some vegetables, and so much. And when it came to this country alone, nobody was there. Srila Prabhupada was writing, when I got down at the Boston, harbor, Srila Prabhupada said that I didn't know where to go, left or right. This was the case. Nobody was there. Somehow then got an opportunity, and then started from there. Of course, devotional service also, don't think that it's an easy task. It's not easy, but it will become easy that when we have that such a will and such a dedication and determination. If we don't have that, then it's be a huge task. They have the dedication, determination, and sincerity, and pure devotional service to the Lord. Everything will be so easy. So yes, paradukha dukhi, that devotees are always like that. They may take extra steps. They may not sleep too much. They may be sacrifice their daily things. They may sacrifice so many things, but they would always upkeep this love for the Lord and the message of the Lord, the message, instructions of the Lord, instructions of the spiritual master, instructions of the devotees, and this is a real devotional service. We may say, okay, we love the Lord, but we don't take any instruction. We say we love Srila Prabhupada, but we don't take any instructions. We say we love ISKCON, don't do anything for ISKCON. So there is no meaning for it. It's meaningless. So it's very important, and it's take it seriously, the devotional service, because of this is Krishna's, giving us this opportunity. Krishna is giving us this opportunity. So don't miss this, and take up this seriously and sincerely. Definitely, Krishna is always, that's our, at the time of, when his time comes, Krishna comes directly. Krishna comes and, take us back. So thank you so much. We'll conclude here. If there are no other concerns, comments, anything. Otherwise, let's conclude. Okay, so let's conclude. Vancha kalpatarubhashya kripa sindubhya evacha padidanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila
Jai.
ki jai.
Jai.
Vrinda Gaudi Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Parapremanandi Hari
Hari
Hari.
Hari Hari Bol.